We are seeing some information from the EPA that they want to make changes in many rodenticides that are currently purchased over the counter. A lot of our farms use them for rodent control, mice and rats. Now, for those of you who get squeamish about it, you might want to just set that aside for a moment. It'll be okay. What we have to do is when you have large amounts of feed stuff like hay and so forth, it's easy to get mice on your farm. That's why so many farms have great cats that are good mousers. And sometimes when loads of hay come in or other feedstuffs, you can even get rats. Well, it's important to remove those pests. They carry disease. Oftentimes, they are probably your worst enemy when it comes to bringing something onto the farm that you don't want. Well, let's go back to what's going on with the EPA. Starting in about 1997, EPA said we have to go through a re-registration process with active ingredients every time they come up in every 15 years. Every active ingredient has to be reviewed by the agency. Well, we are currently in the midst of that, but the EPA is suggesting that a number of these active ingredients used to control mice, rats, etc., would now become restricted use. So when that happens, you as a rancher, so I'm going to say Dean and all of his dairy cows that he's working on getting, you would now need to take a class to have a restricted use herbicide license or pesticide license so that you could use them on farm yourself. Also, a lot of times you've been able to use a bait station that you could just refill, and now it would have to be a single-use bait station, so that generates more waste, more plastics, etc. And you would also, if you're not going to take the class to be able to be your own exterminator, you would now have to hire that done on the farm. Some places already do. Some farms already have exterminators. They make sure to come out and take care of that around the barns and the shop, etc. But that doesn't always happen every time. And so this adds another layer of management and expense that goes along with what a lot of our farmers already have to do, especially if you're a livestock person who hasn't been spraying your own pesticides and maybe you haven't had to have this licensing in the past. So the short answer here is that it will add another layer and an expense, which always gets passed along to the consumer. And none of us really want that, but more regulations tend to lead to it. Justin's shaking his head. He's like, one more thing.
It's always something, isn't it?
It's always something, you know. When it comes down to someone around our area who kind of has to abide by these changes, and you had kind of mentioned or talked about a couple of them, but just real simplified, what does this mean to somebody who's using these already?
Okay, so if you're already doing it, you will now have to get a certification instead of just being able to handle it, because when a product goes from general use to restricted use, you have to be certified to be able to purchase it, because there are purchase records that would record your custom application number. It's going to take some time out of your day. Usually you have to take a written test, then you have to renew every 3 years like we do in the pesticide realm for herbicides and insecticides. And so this just takes more time for you to do. Your certifications aren't overly expensive, but there's something you have to keep up with. And it's unfortunate that I think about the fact that, all right, so we're going to regulate the ones that we use. Maybe that's not all bad, but how long and then until we decide, well, we can't have as many available? And then that really restricts what you can or can't do. You don't necessarily have time to hire a marksman who can just sit by your feed pile and shoot rats or pests if they see them. So you do want to make sure that you have that elimination going on. Again, you've got a number of farmers who already are starting to hire exterminators to handle that on their behalf, but it does add one more thing to the bottom line that you have to pay for, etc.
Getting the certification, I think you had just said that it's not terribly expensive or something along those lines. What would something like that possibly be? I mean, is it just going to be cheaper to hire someone out to do it, or to take the time, study, and pay to take the certification every 3 years?
Depends how you want to handle it. Personally, I've had my commercial applicator's license since I was in college. I think it cost me somewhere between $50 and $75 every 3 years to renew, and I need to sit through an 8-hour class in order to do that. But for the initial investment, if you have to take the time to study and be prepared to do it, and that also, if you move products to restricted use, that may increase the amount that you have to pay when you purchase them. That also would be an additional cost.